All right, everybody, it's a crossover Thursday brought to you by Prize Picks, Locked On Lions, Matt Dery, Locked On Seahawks, my guy, the Seahawk Maven, Corbin Smith. A little crossover here as Detroit will host Seattle this weekend on Sunday. We welcome into the program on this a Thursday, September the 28th, and a Friday, September the 29th. Lions and Seahawks. Corbin, what's going on, my brother? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. I'm actually really looking forward to this game because the Seahawks finally got their offense going, but their defense continues to struggle. So it's strange saying that quarterback might be the least of their concerns with Geno Smith replacing Russell Wilson here.
How about that? We got to get into that and more. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Lions and Seahawks going to be weird, Corbin, without seeing Russell Wilson under center. You mentioned Geno Smith, so that ought to be, I think when people saw the schedule and even saw last year that the Seahawks were coming here, they're like, oh, Russ. All of a sudden, it's kind of a new look team, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of new faces in key places. You got 2 rookie tackles, and you've got a new quarterback that's kind of the bridge QB right now until they get their future franchise quarterback, most likely in next year's draft. And then they've got Jamal Adams out with an injury again, so they're trying to plug and play a few guys in their secondary. They've got a bunch of other rookies playing. So it's clearly a rebuilding year for the Seattle Seahawks, and it's interesting going into this game when you're looking at storylines revolving around this team. As I mentioned a moment ago, almost every one of these crossovers I'm asked immediately about Russell Wilson no longer being here and Geno Smith being the quarterback. But that has not really been the problem for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, they've had their issues scoring points, but I don't think a lot of that falls on Geno Smith's lap. I think he's played really well. He's got a completion rate well above 70%. I think he's at 77% right now. Has not been able to score a lot of touchdowns, but their run game's been very up and down. They haven't been able to really protect him at times from the interior of their offensive line. The tackles, the rookies have actually played pretty well, but overall, the offense has not been the biggest problem. Geno Smith has certainly not been the biggest problem. The issue has been their defense, in particular the run defense, which is surprising. The last 2 years, they've been in the top 5 in the NFL for yards per carry allowed. And this year, they're near the bottom of the league. They're second worst in rushing yards allowed. Teams have just been gashing them with their new hybrid 3-4 defensive scheme. They haven't been able to execute their run fits. They've been missing tackles as much as any team in the NFL. So this seems like it could be a disaster going into this game because the Detroit Lions have the 3rd best rushing attack in the NFL. Even if DeAndre Swift can't play, Jamal Williams has had success against the Seahawks in the past when he played for the Packers. So it feels like right now, it's every offense they're playing, it feels like they're playing against Kyle Shanahan coordinating. Like they just can't get stops against the run. Cordarrelle Patterson went wild for 100, and I believe he had 107 yards rushing in the second half alone on Sunday last week. So they just have not been able to get anything done stopping the run. And if they can't make major improvements in that area this week, they are going to get ran out of Ford Field by this high-powered Lions offense.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk to you about that a little bit. I mean, the days of the Legion of Boom and Bobby Wagner are obviously done. And look, the storyline here is pretty simple. There's a lot of pressure on Dan Campbell this week. And last week, he openly admitted that he fouled up the game pretty good at the end against Minnesota. The Lions had 2 10-point leads in that game, 14-0 and 24-14. The latter being the one that really kills you because it's 8 minutes to go in Minnesota. You've dominated the game. You're playing, to me, a very average Vikings team. At least that's what I saw this past weekend. Jeff Okudah, how about this, Corbin, shuts down Justin Jefferson to 3 catches for 14 yards, and you still lose the football game. Yep. And so now all eyes are going to be on Dan Campbell. The big storyline this week is how's he going to handle clock management, timeouts, late game situations, the 4th down situations where it seems like he goes for it every freaking time. It could be 4th and 20 at their own 5. And you're going, oh, Jack Fox is going to come on to punt. Nope, not Dan Campbell. He's going for it. This is like Ron Rivera on steroids. So it's the storyline here is, can the Lions calm down, win a football game against a team they should beat? They are a favorite for the first time in years, and it will stay that way unless there's something drastic. 2 weeks ago, they were favored against the Commanders. Right until game time, I got back to a pick 'em. So they haven't been a favorite in a football game in 2 years. I think they're going to be this week, because you mentioned Seattle's problems, but all eyes kind of on Dan Campbell here, and can they get the job done, and him call a good game, both offensively and defensively, and just kind of settle in, because last week was a disaster, having Austin Seibert, an injured kicker, by the way, trying a 54-yarder late. He misses. Vikings come down and score. And in those situations, probably number one, go for it, 4th and 4, or punt if you're inside, the opponent's 40. And instead, he decided to kick, and it was a disaster. I don't know how much of that you saw, but it should be interesting to see Pete Carroll versus Dan Campbell this week. I know that's not one of our matchups coming up, but be interesting to see how that goes.
That is kind of a perfect segue, because you got two coaches that their DNA wise are so different, because Pete Carroll's generally one of the more conservative coaches out there, at least in terms of going for it 4th down and being willing to punt and doing it inside their own territory. I mean, he has done that so many times that you've been left scratching your head, like, why aren't you going for it? And then they had a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 2 at the 7-yard line. They decided not to go for it and kick a field goal, when clearly their defense couldn't get up the field, couldn't get stops last week against the Falcons. So that was under much scrutiny after the game too. So maybe it's the same thing for both these coaches. They're trying to go out and have a better game from a clock management and 4th down decision-making process. And that might be the difference in this game, because Seattle's been competitive aside from week 2, where their offense just went AWOL. But the other 2 games, they have been very tight in the game for both those contests. And one of them, they were able to win. The other one last week, unfortunately, didn't make enough plays at the end in order to win at home. So they've been competitive. They're going to be looking to come in and pull the upset. It's strange saying that with the Seahawks coming to Detroit, but that's the state of the two teams right now.
Key matchups coming up next with Corbin, Matt Dery, Locked On Lions, Corbin Smith, host of Locked On Seahawks. Our prize picks, a Thursday crossover. We'll get to those key matchups coming up next. Want to tell you, though, about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net, your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis and every game that you can find. And it's not just NFL, MLB, got playoffs coming up. Division races here at the end, MMA, boxing, and golf. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information. That includes live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. They're the best. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Matt and Corbin, a little Thursday crossover. Lions hosting the Seahawks coming up on Sunday. Key matchups. You start us off, Corbin. What do you see as something that's going to be important this weekend?
The Seahawks have got to find a way to keep Geno Smith clean. And this is not a Lions defense that has played very well in these first couple of games, but still somewhat frightened by the prospect of Aiden Hutchinson going up against Seattle's 2 rookie tackles. Now, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, to this point, they have been the 2 best offensive linemen for the Seahawks. They have handled every challenge that's been thrown at him. Cross has given up 3 sacks, but for the most part has been pretty solid protecting the blind side. And Abe Lucas has been the better tackle of the 2. Their 3rd-round pick out of Washington State, I believe, has only given up 1 sack this year. He has been a rock on the right side. He's been the better run blocker of the 2, but he hasn't had quite as many challenges as what Charles Cross has had at left tackle. He did get to go against Nick Bosa a couple weeks ago and actually held up fairly well against him, but Hutchinson's been playing about half his snaps on each side. So both these rookies are going to get their shot to go again against the top 3 pick in Aiden Hutchinson. And so for 2 teams that are pretty young, and, the Lions, I think, are closer to being a contender, obviously, than the Seahawks, but these are 2 teams that are trying to get back into contention. Those are the matchups that you are really zeroing in, looking at those high talent rookies, the high upside rookies, and all 3 of those players getting started on day 1. We get to see that as a featured matchup that I think is going to have a major bearing in this game. If the Seahawks can't keep Aiden Hutchinson out of the backfield and he's able to get to Geno Smith several times, it's going to be difficult for them to get their passing game going. But if they can keep Hutchinson out of the backfield, I really like the chances for Geno Smith with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, and all the weapons he's got around him. I like their chances of being able to get the ball downfield against this Lions secondary that has really struggled the first 3 games of the season.
Well, what's the old radio term? You stole my thunder. You're spot on in terms of what the matchup is that bugs me here, and that is that Tracy Walker's done for the year, and the Lions have not been able to get any pressure. Well, the Lions have gotten pressure on the quarterback. They've won. That's one game. When they haven't, they've lost. I mean, last week Kirk Cousins was sacked once. The edges did not do a great job. The interior of that defensive line, you think the Seahawks is bad. The Lions has not been good, both against the run and the pass. And you're right, giving Geno Smith some time in the pocket to go deep possibly against Juju Hughes and Deshaun Elliott when Walker, your quarterback of your defense, your captain, is now done for the year with an Achilles is definitely something to watch. I'll take it a step further. Jeff Okudah's played really well on the island on one of the corner spots. Devontae Smith, week 1, shut him down. Terry McLaurin, week 2, shut him down. Last week, I mentioned Justin Jefferson, 3 catches. And that's crazy. So Okudah's really stepped up and is playing well. The question is, for 4 straight weeks and having a guard Lockett, the speedster, or DK, can he hold his own? Will there be a little bit of slippage, which happens in this game? And watch Amani Oruwariye, who struggled so mightily last week. He was flagged 6 times for defensive holding, pass interference, and the like. So that is a concern. I think the Lions, if they can get, like you said, get to the quarterback a little bit and put some pressure on Smith and don't let him go deep, I think that's something to watch, this weekend. DK's not – it's interesting. I thought he'd be gone after Russ left and all the changes. Him still being there, what does that say about him? And or is it just a possibility that if this thing goes south, could he be somebody that's moved at the deadline?
I don't think they're going to be trading him anytime soon. I think he wants to be in Seattle. He wants to be the focal point of the offense moving forward. And I'm sure he went into this thinking, hey, there's a really good chance that the quarterback I'm going to be playing with isn't on the roster right now.
Yeah.
This is going to be kind of that bridge year. But he and Geno Smith actually have a pretty good connection. And last year, 2 of Metcalf's 3 best games receiving yardage-wise were the games that Geno Smith started. So that is not translated yardage-wise so far this year, but he did have his first touchdown last weekend. And so his size certainly is something that's going to be interesting going up against Jeff Okudah. And when you switch gears here now, the Seahawks on defense, like I mentioned earlier, they have been abysmal. Last week, they gave up 7 of the 8 completions to Marcus Mariota in the first half, went for 20-plus yards. So they've been giving up tons of explosives in the passing game. And the run game, they gave up over 100 yards to Cordarrelle Patterson in the second half alone. They gave them almost 200 rushing yards to the 49ers the week before. Like, they have been, I call them the Legion of Matadors right now because they have just been swinging that red curtain. Hey, come on over, Cordarrelle Patterson, and then pulling it out, wide open gap. That's just been the way it's been the last 3 weeks. And they were able to get some breaks against the Broncos in the red zone, a couple fumbles they recovered, and that ended up being a difference maker. That's why they won that game. That has not happened the last 2 weeks. They've not been able to generate those turnovers. So rather than just pointing out one matchup, I don't usually like to go the cheating route and be like one whole unit against another whole unit.
Yeah.
But to me, this is about Lions offensive line versus Seahawks defensive line, because this is a unit, particularly in the interior, with Al Woods coming back, Poona Ford coming back. They added Shelby Harris. Who knows if he's going to be healthy enough to play this week. They got Quentin Jefferson back. This is a group that has a lot of experience and a lot of talent. It was supposed to be a strength for this team, and yet they have struggled for the most part. Al Woods has been a monster, but everyone else has been very inconsistent, and that's been part of the problem stopping the run. They haven't generated a lot of pressure from the interior, rushing after quarterbacks. So that group has got to step up. And I just look at this Lions offensive line, and they've got a couple really high draft picks, the tackle positions. They've got one of the best centers in the NFL. I like the 2 guards they have, younger players that are coming into their own. And so, again, this is another matchup that frightens me from a Seahawks perspective, because I'm just thinking if they get that downhill running game going, and everybody's been able to do that against the Seahawks, especially off tackle, If they get that rolling with that offensive line, the way this defensive line is played, Darrell Taylor not setting the edge, I expect to see more Boye Mafe this week, the rookie out of Minnesota. He's been really good against the run in limited reps, but this has been a front line that has struggled across the board with the exception of Al Woods from a consistency standpoint and going up against a really good offensive line. This game is going to come down as much as any game to the trenches. If the defensive line plays better for the Seahawks, then they have a chance to go into Detroit and win this game. If not, this could be one of those games where by halftime, I'm already writing up my post-game article because it's a blowout.
I'll say this, Corbin. I love Shelby Harris's interview after the Denver game when they said, what was the difference in the game? He said, because they traded for me. I thought that was funny. He had a little laugh about that being a part of that Russell Wilson deal. I'll say this, DeAndre Swift is not going to play this week with that shoulder. But like you mentioned before, this run game, depth across the offensive line has been really good. They've missed, the Lions have. Halapoulivanti, Vaitai, Ragnow missed a game. Jonah Jackson's missed 2 games. Yet the guys that have stepped up and stepped in, Evan Brown, Dan Skipper, have done good jobs. And with Williams, Craig Reynolds, and even Justin Jackson now in Swift's stead, they're fine in terms of running the football. And that might be the game plan, like you said, for this weekend. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. All right, when we come back, we got a little prediction time. We'll see what Corbin thinks of the Seahawks, and I think of the Lions, and how this game is going to finish up. We're going to tell you about our friends, though, at BriteCo. You don't want to be that guy, folks. You certainly don't want to be that guy and have it all splattered over the internet that you lost that engagement ring. You lost that watch, whatever it is. The guys at BriteCo Jewelry Insurance will make sure that you get a replacement for the full value of that ring, no matter if it's lost, stolen, or you just can't figure out what happened to it. Go to brite.co/lockdown. It's the fastest and easiest and cheapest way to cover your butt with the best jewelry insurance in the business. These guys at BriteCo are geniuses. They made buying insurance for your engagement ring or that watch or whatever so easy. You can get it covered in 2 minutes or less on your cell phone. It's that simple. You won't find a better deal on great coverage that's super affordable. Go to brite.co. That's BRITE.co/lockdown. We all hate insurance, right? This is easy. It's simple. It's not going to cost you anything, like $5 a month. It's awesome. Check out brite.co/lockdown. All the videos on the website. Go there now. brite.co/lockdown. Corbin Smith, Locked On Seahawks, Matt Dery, Locked On Lions. Let's wrap this thing up with some predictions. Corbin, I'll start. I think the Lions are going to win this football game. They're at home. I think they've got a bad taste in their mouth after what happened last week. The Seattle team, and I've watched them, and obviously you watch every play. I think this is a winnable game for Detroit. I think they bounce back and keep it simple with that run game. I think the offense has been really good with Jared Goff, and I don't think they're going to have any problems scoring. This is not the Legion of Boom. So I'm looking at this as about a 30-23 Lions final, 30-24, right around the number 6 and 7. And then Detroit takes care of business. They just got to clean some of these things up at the end of games, but they should have won last week. And I like this matchup this weekend for Detroit. What about you?
I look at this game as kind of one of those trap games for the Lions because you mentioned they're not used to being favored. So maybe that plays into the Seahawks' hands. Pete Carroll loves having an underdog, but I don't see this game working out very well for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't like the opponent, their ability to run the ball, explosive plays in the passing game. Even if they're missing some of their key guys on the outside, they've still got enough weapons. I think Hawkinson is a guy that's going to give the Seahawks a lot of problems too. They've had issues with tight ends for the last 12 years. That hasn't changed this year. On top of the other issues that they haven't been able to get off the field. They have 1 3-and-out on defense the entire season. If they can find a way to get some quick stops, create some turnovers, get some 3-and-outs in this game, and allow the offense to have more opportunities, the offense should be able to move the ball and score points against this Lions defense. That's the recipe for them winning. I just don't have confidence that they're going to be able to do that because they haven't shown they can do it to this point. They can't tackle. The run defense has been bad. So I'm going to go with Lions 34 and Seahawks 17. I think it ends up getting pretty ugly in the second half. I just don't think the Seahawks defense can get it done.
Corbin, you said 1 3-and-out? One in 3 games? Come on now.
They didn't have any 3-and-outs the first 2 games, and then they had 1 against the Falcons, and they turned around the next drive and gave up a long touchdown drive. So it wasn't a precursor for things to come. They just they haven't been able to get off the field. So
it's crazy to think because of the history there and Pete Carroll. I was just going to ask you real fast as we wrap up, like, how's he handled everything? We talked about Dan Campbell, who's handled everything pretty well, although there's a little heat now, and it's year 2. It's a rebuild. He's not going anywhere. But Carroll and the losing, I mean, this has got to be a different vibe in Seattle, huh?
yeah, I think it's a little bit different this year. Last year, there were such high expectations because they still had Russell Wilson. They were coming off a season. They went 12-4. They won the NFC West. And then to go out and finish 7-10, I mean, Pete Carroll stormed out of a press conference, which that's just not Pete Carroll's personality at all. He was really struggling with that. And he has never had back-to-back 10-loss seasons his entire coaching career. And so the prospect of that happening this year and finally having 2 straight seasons, I don't know that he is handling it necessarily well, but he's maintaining positivity. The offense did make big leaps last week, so he believes this defense is going to get turned around. From what I'm seeing, it's going to take some time, and they don't have time right now. They need to get this ship righted, but yeah, he's remaining positive, but you can tell that he's disappointed with where the defense is at because they expected that to be an area that was a strength for this team. And losing Jamal Adams certainly has hurt, but this unit has underperformed through the first 3 games.
Shout out, by the way, to Scott Nelson on your practice squad, U of D Jesuit High School, and a great kid with a great family. So we got to give him a shout out. I see he comes home this weekend. So Corbin, great to see you, my friend. Thanks for doing this. It's the Thursday crossover as always, and all the best the rest of the way, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Locked on Lions, Locked on Seahawks. Matt and Corbin with you on a Thursday crossover brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks.